G'day everyone and welcome to our weekly edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. Apologies for the delay. I'm not going to drop my cohorts into it other than to say it wasn't my fault. But a great win by the Crows over the weekend. So without any further ado, let's crack straight in and talk about it, shall we? Good evening, and welcome to round 8 of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by Crowcast, and we have a full deck, which explains why we're 20 minutes late. And culprit number 1, Macca, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm the culprit. Yeah, brain's not working too well. No, look, I wasn't too good last week, but I was feeling well before I fucked up again today.
Nah, look, it's good to have you back, mate, and I'm glad you're feeling a bit better. And it's a good show to come back on because obviously we've got some good stuff to talk about. Brownie, how are you, sir?
Very good, mate. Yeah, can't complain. Pretty happy with the weekend's result.
Yeah, and Brownie and I shared in some festivities yesterday for my son for his Bucks night. So, but neither of us have pulled up too badly, have we? Because we pulled up stumps relatively early, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
And Large Man, how are you, sir?
Good, thanks, Finn. Yeah, good to have everyone back on the panel tonight.
Is it though?
I noticed
Is it though?
Well, I noticed it took a win for us for that to happen. So maybe a few fair weather supporters here, but that's all right.
Look, do you reckon? I reckon you're right.
Nah, look, it was actually a great win. It's always nice to beat Carlton too. That's a little bit of extra special mayo on top there, but nah, it was good. I think probably the best performance we've had this year so far, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Actually. We looked very free-flowing and dynamic with our ball movement, and we'll delve into that during the course of events. Of course, we are live and interactive, and we've got a great crew in the studio audience here, so if any of you would like to have your say on proceedings during the course of the evening, please feel free to put your hand up and I'll get you on. We had Patrick on last week, who was really good, and I can see a few regs there as well, so by all means, get on board and get around it. We'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're on YouTube, of course, and you haven't yet availed yourself of our Discord channel, the links are in our profile and descriptions and socials and all the rest of it. It's a great little community, up to about 470 odd members now, and good game day chat and good chat during the week, and great banter during the live shows. Of course, the YouTube chat is also open if you want to have your say. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. Right, Reggie in the YouTube chat, Macca, is a big fan of yours. I'm just wondering if he's a relative or whether you've actually paid someone off just to be in there and pump you up a bit.
Who?
I don't know. Reggie Miller is under Reggie Miller.
I don't know Reggie Miller.
Well,
he's obviously a very sensible person. I think he's got a very high IQ.
Look, far be it from me to denigrate any of our great listeners. So, yes, I'll run with that.
Okay.
All right. Look,
I don't know, mate.
Let's crack straight in, shall we? Because we have got lots to talk about. And it was the Crows 16-14, 1-1-1, resounding 10-goal winners over Carlton, 7 goals, 850. And as Big Man alluded to earlier, it was they're our bunnies, aren't they? Let's be honest, they're our bunnies. We don't seem to have a lot of trouble with Carlton, particularly when we play them in Adelaide, and it reminded me very much of that game in 2023, big man, when we pantsed them.
Oh, the gather round game?
Yeah. No. 2023. Was it a gather round game, was it? Yeah.
First game in gather round.
First game. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Dawson, he went nuts that night too. So it's funny, isn't it? Nixie's had some difficulty against a few teams in his journey, but Carlton, for the most part, hasn't been one of them. He's actually been all over him. And yeah, I mean, it's great. Obviously, it makes a difference when you play him in Adelaide, which we have the last few times because we went a long streak there without playing him at home. So
didn't we have a game where Berry kicked the winner? Was that in Adelaide or was that over there?
No, that was a marble. But for the most, I think we went how many years? I think it might have been 7 or 8 years without playing them.
Yeah, there was a bit of
in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was probably, like I said, probably the most complete performance we've had. But because not only was the offense stuff great, but geez, the defense was so good. And as a group and also individually, you know, there's a few boys who really stood up back there. And it was just good to see the run and gun game again. You know, obviously there's also the other side of the equation with Carlton. You know, I don't think they turned up, to be honest.
No.
We pantsed them in the midfield, which is their one wood, and obviously we beat them on the outside because they're not particularly quick. So they didn't really. They were leaking holes left, right, and centre, particularly in that last, that second half, and they look like they go up pretty quick. So that's probably an asterisk, I say. You know, they allowed us to play the way we want to play, and we're not always going to have that like we didn't last week against Freo. But a win's a win, and hopefully that gets the boys' confidence back up heading to the showdown.
Now, Maka, we haven't heard from you for a while, and the jury's out on whether that's a good or a bad thing. But what were your thoughts?
I don't know I should say anything after that. No, look, well, I think about the amazing thing about the win really was the fact that it followed possibly one of our worst efforts for a very, very long time last week. I mean, we were absolutely incompetent last week. I love the way we bounced back with a genuine vengeance. And O'Brien, who we've all been really getting stuck into, he dominated. And, you know, DeConning's been regarded as one of the best ruckmen around, and he was made to look like a fool by O'Brien in terms of the ruck work. And
I saw a comment in... Sorry, Mac. I saw a comment in the Carlton Big Footy chat that suggested that DeConing has a lot of trouble with rucks who don't jump against him but take away his space, and that's exactly Riley O'Brien. So maybe O'Brien's his kryptonite. Maybe he's just one of those ruckmen and he finds it difficult.
Yeah, well, look, it's probably right because I mean, Rob in turn he finds the guys like Wits, etc., with very long arms, he just can't, because Rob can't get very high off the ground. He has trouble with them. But against like DeConning, who's much lighter, he could take his space and make it very difficult for him. But the good part about it was, I mean, Crouch getting injured and being out was actually a blessing, because what we actually did, we brought fast people quick people into the midfield. And that's where we actually really slaughtered them in the midfield. And that is very rare for us, which is to make that particular comment. But we rotated about 5 or 6 quick players through there, and it worked very, very well for us. And that's I think, was the tail of the tape.
Well, I hate to say I told you so, everyone, but wasn't it nice to see Joshua Shelley get some CBAs, Jeffrey?
Yeah, that was... Yeah, I couldn't work out why he wasn't in the given much of a spell in the second half, but in the first half he's just a ball magnet when he gets in there. And even with Peatling having a bit more time in there, I thought the balance just was a lot better. We were quicker and much more dynamic, and I don't think we missed. Well, I think as Mac has said, Matt Crouch not being there was a blessing, I think, in the end. And hopefully we'll. And even in the second half, once Berry came on, he was unbelievable. Like, he had 10 possessions in just over a quarter of football, and he found targets.
I hate to call that one as well, but hooey, eh? Very slow and
No, he was great. He was hitting targets, even hit a target with his left inside 50, and drew a couple of frees in the middle. He was really good.
Yeah, no,
a question, Fiend. A question, Fiend, and I know you're a big Berry fan, so you'd probably be able to answer
very
this
much
question.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, did he look quicker than normal?
No,
I thought he gained a yard of pace.
Oh, you don't do that like in the space of 6 months, Mac. It's he has been played predominantly inside, and I noticed in a lot of his attendances in the last quarter, he wasn't committing inside as much. He was on the peripheral. He was playing at the point a lot of the time, on the defensive point, and he was getting a few receives out of that first contested ball situation. And no, he's never lacked for pace. Never lacked for pace. He's got low centre of gravity, as I've always said, so he can burst through, he can break a tackle, and as we saw, his disposal is quite fine. And yes, he may have gone through a bit of a patch where he was a bit fumbly and a bit, a bit dicey with his disposal, but people forget very quickly. And, aside from those games where he was basically playing for his life, he's been very good for us when he's come in. And, it'll be interesting to see how that progresses, because to me, he's always been a first 23 player, in my opinion. And we need to start persevering with these blokes.
Well, on that performance.
So you go,
yeah, but just thanks, mate. No, on that performance, you'd have to say you're right, Pete, and which irks me to say that.
That must piss you off.
Oh, greatly. Well, you've got to be right sometime, mate.
I was just going to say, it doesn't matter how quick you are if you're not clean, because fumbles slow everyone down. So
yes, definitely.
What made a difference was that he was super clean with his ball take, and when he is clean with his take, he actually does have some genuine acceleration and power through his legs. So, and we saw that. So obviously Carlton are really slow in the midfield, so that helps as well. And he came on as a sub, so you'd hope he's a bit fresher than the other boys. But no, he's definitely that's a bit of a it's a myth. The myth about him being slow. He's definitely not slow. He's got issues, but it's not his pace.
Yeah, and I think getting rid of half that hair probably helped with his aerodynamics as well.
Aerodynamics.
Yeah, well, you make good sense there, Pete.
But look, he was great. He was great in the twos last week. Kicked 2 goals, 1 from the midfield, and was very dynamic. So he earned his call up, and I was glad to see. I was glad to see that he was focused very much, and Brandy and I were talking about this before the cast. It seemed like he had a mindset of, I'm not just going to be a little bit player here, I'm actually going to have an impact. And he made sure that he had an impact, held on to the ball when he could have just given an easy little flick to the next bloke, and really made his possessions count. So I was very happy for Sam, because it's hard, as Sid Draper will tell you, it's hard to come on with a quarter to go in a fixture that's basically dead and have an impact. And I thought he made every post a winner.
He certainly did.
Now, a couple of other things. We've got to talk about Smithers. I think and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. Personally, I was extremely disappointed with his selection. Macca, what did you think?
Well, I didn't want him selected.
That's what I mean. I'm not talking about his performance. Just his selection at this stage.
Well, I wouldn't have selected him, because I think you're rolling back to not just the past, but the about to die situation. Because Smithers is definitely in his last year. It has to be in his last year. So, to me, really was a retrograde step in picking him. And I won't say anything about his performance, but
we'll talk about that separately.
Yeah, but you would expect in that situation to give a younger bloke who is busting, trying to get into the side, and proving himself. And with a bit of form, I thought you would have given him a go, but obviously not.
Big man?
Well, I thought you were going to cancel the podcast, Fiend, if Smithers was selected. What happened there?
No, Smithers and Murphy. If Murphy and Smithers were selected. So
all right, that's not how I remember it, but all right.
everyone's very relieved because they love the podcast, Big Man, that Murphy wasn't selected.
Oh, bloody Murphy, jeez.
Well, we sort of half joked about it on last week, but there was a bit of truth to it. I did think he was a legit chance because he played well against Woodville West Torrens. He's one of the few that did. Him and Barry, actually. So no surprise, those are the two that came in. I have some issues with it because obviously it's going back to a well where we know what he can offer, and you know he's been such a good player for us, but obviously he's at the back end of his career and he's lost that bit of extra speed and penetration with his kick. But at the same time, I didn't think Edwards was ready just yet either. So I don't know who else they could have put in. I thought they could have put Dawson back to half back or played Cumming there and had Nank on the wing. So I think there were alternatives. But yeah, I was a little disappointed when I heard about it. But obviously, we'll talk about his performance. But I still have some issues with it going forward. It's not like you play well, so there's no issue now. Because I think it's one game and he could be shown up on next week in the Showdown. But no, credit to him. He obviously came to play and he played his role well.
Brownie?
I was definitely disappointed he got selected, but completely not shocked. You could see the writing on the wall with the Scott Burns interview talking about Draper getting dropped, that they've just got this mentality about playing the old guys. And I was thinking hoping it wasn't going to happen, but when it did happen, not surprised at all.
Yeah, well, it all started with Smithers being on the radio the previous week and not jokingly, saying he hoped that he was still ahead of Charlie Edwards and Oscar Ryan in terms of the selection, even though he rated both. Look, I guess it depends on what mode the club is in. And it's clear to me that we are no longer in sort of build the squad, gain experience mode. We're gunning for a flag mode. Whether you agree or disagree with that in terms of whether that's the right thing, I think it's clear to me that now they are selecting a side to win every week. And whether you agree with those selections or not, I think we probably have to adjust our when we're looking at selection and all the rest of it, we have to adjust our benchmark, I guess, because it's clear that they're no longer prioritising getting games into younger players. That's obvious. So on that basis,
100% right.
Yeah, so I think on that basis, you can make a case for Smithers because, as you said, big man, he was reasonably well performed over the last couple of weeks and whatnot. I think it's a mistake. I think we're leaving a lot of youth in the twos that we're in danger of losing, and given that we've only just solved that little bit of a dip that we had in the 23 to 26 year age profile on our list, if we can't afford to lose blokes like Charlie Edwards and Ryan and Schoenberg and these blokes and Berry, and we can't afford to lose them because there's too much of a gap again then. So to me it's short-sighted, but I think when we're looking at selection now, we have to look at it on the basis of what their thinking is, that they're thinking what their best 23 is that week to beat the opposition. Do you reckon that's fair, Branny?
Yeah, the only thing that worries me about that is that, like, I can see Brodie had a good game on the weekend, but he had a good game in an environment where there was very little pressure. We saw last year, before he got dropped in the high pressure games, because he was slow and not really up with the pace of the game. As soon as he's under pressure, he just does that dump kick forward, up 35, 40 metres to no one, and the ball comes straight back. He didn't do that on the weekend because he had time and space. But in the big games against the teams where there are pressure, I don't think he's got it. I'd rather have a young guy blooded to pick up the pace of the game at this time of year so that when we get to the pointy end of the year, they're okay.
Yeah, and this is the problem when you re-sign extend a bloke like Smithers into another year. Retain him on the list when these situations arise. When a halfback or two or a couple of halfbacks fall out of the team due to injury or suspension or whatever, they're going to play a guy like Brody. So if Brody wasn't on the list, then who's next? It probably would have been an Edwards or a Ryan. And that's I guess that's the problem you face or you create for yourself when you retain these experienced blokes, is that typically the selectors are going to go to the players they trust and know, and that obviously was Brody.
Yeah, Mac, I worry that he's going to burn our list a little bit, and we're going to be an almost team that it peaks at about 5 or 6. And then we're going to have to flick the switch again and do another little mini rebuild, go back to the well.
Yeah, well, look, it's definitely a backward move, but I think Big Man summed it up very, very well. That it's really caused by the fact of that 1 year extension, that they kept playing him until he got that 1 year extension, which I could never understand that part of it either. I think that was lunacy in itself. And you raise a very good point, Thane, when you mentioned the fact that you're going to, blokes like Edwards, blokes like Ryan, and there'll be others that they'll think, well, it's no good hanging around here because they just play the old favourites all the time. There's not a chance. Not even when there's an injury, I still can't get a game. And so that's the danger. That's the danger, because if I was them, I would be looking to go to another club that says, I'll play you.
Well, I mean, I'll harken back to early 2023 when our season was set up by some good early wins on the back of some really good performances by our younger players. And if you recall, after that, probably first half a dozen games, they started going back to the well when it looked like we could make finals. Sloane came back into the middle, Matty Crouch came back into the side,
Exactly.
And what it's done is cost blokes like Berry game time in the ones. Now, so you could, people say that, blokes like Berry are not up to it. Well, I would submit that they just haven't been given the opportunities, because the moment that the club saw an opportunity to make finals, they went back to the old guard. And there was talk last year that Sam Berry was going to move, and whether that was on the table or whether there was, I don't know what the story was, but it's just not, to me, it's just not good list management. And I can understand them wanting to make finals. Of course, you play to win, but I think there's got to be a longer term view that meshes with the short term. Who we're playing this week. You've got to have a list management strategy, in my opinion, and it feels to me like there's a bit of a disconnect, Big Man, between selection committee and list management.
Well, look, I'm big on like making sure that if you are going to bring in youth, that they earn their spot in this team. I don't like playing youth just for the sake of it, because often that does the player more harm than good if they're not ready. So look, Oscar Ryan was in better form last year, so I don't think he is ready to go just yet. Edwards is around the mark, but his contested side of his game is still, and his defensive stuff still got a bit of work to do. He's got a great booming kick, and he's he's tall and strong, but he's still a bit lax defensively, and he needs to earn a bit more of his own ball. But he has been in pretty decent form, so I think he could have had a shot at it. But yeah, look, I do agree. I mean, it is a bit of a halfway house situation where we're sort of playing a bit of youth, but we're also playing quite a bit of experience as well. We're trying to merge the two and hope that it synergizes, and it sort of creates a finals team. Which, look, we might play finals this year, but I don't know if going forward. Well, certainly this year, I can't see us winning the flag this year, and And in the next few years, as much, we'll lose Tex, we'll lose Lairdy, Crouch will be gone.
Exactly.
And then, suddenly Dawson, Keys, Neil Bourne and O'Brien are like in the twilight of their careers. So,
Yep.
you got to make sure, I understand the need and want to maximize what we have now because, we've got guys who are in their prime or entering their prime, Rankine, Dawson, etc. So I don't have an issue with us playing, senior players like Tex, for instance. But, I would just like to see us trust the youth a bit more. We're not horrible in that regard. Like, I'm glad we're playing Curtin every game so far, even though he's had a couple of quiet ones. He showed on the weekend why he should be selected. Taylor had a good game, so he showed the coach showed a bit of faith in him, and he repaid them on the weekend. Nank isn't going gangbusters, but he was a starting player on the weekend as well. So look, it's not terrible in that regard. So I'm not like completely down on our selection policy, but it does feel like it's sort of having a cake and eating it too in terms of where they are at, because it's sort of in between. And it, to me, I agree. It sort of sets you up for no man's land going forward if you're not careful, like a St Kilda type, because sometimes it's better just to go in the one extreme.
Well, irrespective of players being ready or not ready, and I would suggest to you that the SANFL is actually not a good indicator of form, to be honest with you. I think a bloke can get bloody lost in the SANFL real quick, but I think Macca was that alluded to earlier, Brownie. The move for me would have either been Dawson back to the flank or Nankervis back to halfback, which is actually his natural position. But what we ended up doing is playing Nankervis in a position that he's not as comfortable in on the wing, for the sake of bringing in Brodie Smith. And now Nankervis hasn't been in great form, but play him in his position, for God's sake. Because now he's likely to get dropped and his form's going to taper off. And this is what I feel our selection policy leads to. It's these big peaks and troughs of form of our second tier or our kids coming through. Like, Dowling seems to be off now. Harry Schoenberger's been off for a while. These kids, because they don't get a run at it, their form, tails off, understandably. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that I have, Brownie, with it, is that we don't give these lads enough time to find their feet at AFL level, to play in the position that they've been selected in the squad to play in the first place, and to actually show some faith and confidence that you're not going to get dropped if you have a bad week. You might get dropped if you have a bad month.
Yeah, and Sid Draper is probably the perfect example of that. If you look at, five games as a sub, 2 games where he wasn't a sub, but he wasn't necessarily pushed through the midfield as much as he should have been. They just haven't given him a crack. They should have given him 3 cracks in 3 weeks in a row in the midfield. He's clearly got the chops to do it. He's a contested beast with, like, as you say, second efforts are fantastic, which is something we've actually been lacking in the midfield. But they refuse to do it. And Scott Burns on that interview basically alluded to the fact that Stephen Rowe was saying something in Draper that they're not seeing. If they're not seeing it, then I don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah, Mac, did you hear that Scott Burns interview?
I did actually, yes.
What did you think of it? I thought it was incredibly negative with regards to Draper.
Well, it was very dismissive of Draper, virtually just saying that he's not he needs to get back and Rowie raised the point about you dropped him. You played him and he didn't go well, and you dropped him and you put him into the sandful, and he just absolutely burnt and showed you that he can play. And wouldn't that have been good to bring him back while he's got his confidence up? And I can't even remember what his reply was, because it wasn't a yes or a no. It was just a brush off.
Well, his reply was basically, you must be seeing something that we're not seeing.
That's it. Yeah, it was just a brush off. So
I know the coaches really wanted to start kicking more rather than going with instinct handball every time he gets it. Like, I was there at the game last week, obviously not this week. I didn't quite make the trip to Port Lincoln, but last week they I could hear him on the sidelines. They're telling him to kick, stop handballing it. So I think they're trying to work on his because obviously he's got extreme pace. But it'd be great for him to run the lines and use his legs a bit more.
I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you right there, big man. Because Matt Crouch, that's all he fucking does is handball. So they're yelling to Matt Crouch, going kick it, and maybe Matt kick it forward, and maybe Matt kick it more than 5 meters, and maybe stop handballing. Come on,
to be fair, that's not Crouch's game. Crouch's game is getting first hands on the ground ball, feeding it out.
That's a myth.
Outside players.
That's a myth.
It's not a myth. It's what he excels at when he's playing good footy.
It's a myth. He is not our go-to. He is not our number one go-to inside midfielder. He is just not. The statistics over the last 2 years will tell you how much of a myth that is, and that's how he keeps being described, as this, inside distributor sort of thing. But most of his handballs are from uncontested possessions, not from contested possessions. And if you don't believe me, you go back and have a look at the stats, because it's a fact.
I think there was a period in his career where that was definitely the case, and that eventually led him to getting dropped, I think, in that sort of 2019 to 2022 sort of era. He was definitely a stat pig and was getting a lot of uncontested ball. But, when he came back into the side, he was actually doing some really good stuff in congestion and with clearance work. Rankine's probably our best clearance player these days, actually. But, look, I know the point you're making, but in terms of his skill set, that's what they want from Crouch. And so they don't want Crouch to drive the legs as much or kick as much, kick out of. They want him to give handballs to the halfbacks, to the sweepers, to anyone they can other than him. Draper, they want Draper to use his speed because he's got it. And look, it's his instinct. He's developed a bit of a habit, and it's not a terrible thing. But what he likes to do is when he gets out of stoppage, he loves to give a quick handball to get a 1-2, and that's okay sometimes. But other times it's actually a negative. And when you got pace like he does, they wanted to run the lines and use his legs and then kick the footy inside 50. And so they're trying to work on things like that. I'm not saying that I didn't hear this Burns interview, so he probably said some things that he shouldn't have. But I can tell you that that's something they really want him to work on, and probably the reason why he's been back in the SANFL.
Look, it'd be fair to say that in that particular interview, that Rowie was trying to pump up the young lad's tyres, and that Burns just kept making them flat again all the time. It was, I thought, derogatory in the sense that it was, not derogatory, dismissive. Dismissive, wasn't it? Because Rowie was doing his best to pump up the lad's tyres and just saying that, the more opportunity you give him, the better he's going to be. But Burns wasn't buying it. He just dismissed it.
And let's be honest, if they want him to kick more, when he's in CBA, well, they wouldn't know what he's doing at AFL level in CBAs because they're playing him on a half-forward flank. Or that's fair. Or he had the sub vest on. So I get where you're coming from, big man, and I'm sure that's the case. But I guess my argument to that is that that's not what we're seeing at AFL level, because he's not being played in position at an AFL level. And the game against Carlton was a perfect opportunity to give more midfield minutes to him against Carlton with Crouch out. And it was fantastic that we were able to give Peatling more, because Peatling is being robbed of minutes by Crouch. And Peatling, when you're talking about a contested ball, is exactly that. And he and Berry and these blokes are able to actually carry the ball through congestion rather than Crouch, who's very flat-footed. But the footage doesn't lie. And every piece of footage that I've seen of Sid Draper in the middle at AFL level, he has been the one that, if he doesn't get involved in the first possession, he is often the one that will make the second tackle or impact the disposal of the opponent more than anyone else, because he is a terrier. And if the only fault is that he handballs a bit too much, well, I'd rather see them work on that with him at AFL level, because it didn't seem to hurt us when he was in there.
No, that's fair.
Oh,
And like, you go, Macca.
I was going to say, the only negative against what you said, Fleen, he wasn't getting it enough to actually, even if he did what you were asking him to do, wasn't really getting it a real lot.
But he wasn't in there much, Mac.
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're saying that. Well,
no, I mean, he was playing on a half forward.
That is true. That is true, and I guess it's the case with most young mids don't get 100% opportunity. They've got to make the most of the opportunities that they get, and it's when they actually make that when they do actually maximise that opportunity, that's when they start getting more. Because the idea is to try and win every centre clearance, and I think, I don't know that he's ready for that all the time. But I do agree with you that he was also underused as well.
They do try to protect those first-year players who are midfielders. Like, it's pretty rare that they get to play on ball full time. I don't think we've used him enough in there because that's where he's best suited. But I think they want him to get used to AFL speed of things, but they don't want to throw him to the wolves in the midfield and burn him out because it's very hard to play consistent footy in the midfield when you're young. Like, look how much it took Saliga a couple of years to get match fit in there, and look at them in the league. You'll be surprised how few high draft picks that are midfielders actually get a full time gig in there. They generally do play either half forward or half back.
Ashcrofts don't get.
Well, no, because even like Levi hasn't had a single centre bounce almost this whole year, and Will, Well, they are packed in there. But Will's played quite a bit at half forward as well, and on the wing. So like he's been managed through it a little bit. Dacos was a midfield. He started as a half back in the system. McKercher the same. Sheasel the same. So like it's not just us. The
point is they're getting played. Sid Draper is getting a quarter here and there, and then gets dropped because according to his midfield coach or is the senior assistant coach, he's not doing much. And I felt like you can argue whether Sid should have been dropped or not. That's one thing. But to be like Macca said and just be dismissive of his efforts and not to have anything positive to say, to me was we're not very good at handling these young lads. The issue with Rochelle last year, the fact you talk about not many midfielders get much of a run in their first year. Well, we protect midfielders for the first 4 years of their career. We haven't seen Charlie Edwards or Oscar Ryan. We hardly see Dowling. We don't see Schoenberg anymore. We haven't seen much of Berry. Well, we bury these kids in the twos. So I think it's in isolation, big man. I could probably agree, Brownie. But I don't know how you feel, Jeff. But to me, it's part of a bigger mindset that the club has. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think the last 5 years there's been a reluctance to play youth. I think the biggest issue with Sid is I just don't think it's right. It's okay, for a game or two to play them as the sub, but to play them 5 games as a sub is just messing with their mind. And how do you get confidence if you're coming on as a sub? And as you say, it's hard to come on cold after three-quarter time and just pick up the pace of the game and dominate and show enough to get selected next week. I think after the first couple of weeks as sub, they should have actually trusted him and given him 2 or 3 games in a row and said, we're going to play you, just play your natural game, because he's not going to give you his best playing on a half-forward flank. He's a contested ball pig, and that's where you're going to see his best. But you've got to trust him. You can't just give him a bit here and a bit there and expect him to pick it up, because it is a big step from playing junior football to AFL. But he showed in the trial games he's got it. There's no doubt he's got it. He's just got to be trusted.
Anyway, look, I wanted to get the selection out of the way first because it was a very positive result. There was just a couple of other little question marks I had on selection. I know we're a bit light on for tall forwards at the moment, but does anyone think it was a real big risk to take Riley Thilthorpe into that game, considering he spent most of the time going one-handed at balls?
Look, I thought it was strange. really strange that that he was played. I noticed, the way he was strapped, he had, I think, about 4 fingers on one hand strap, and but the way I think the way they strapped it all together as well, though, they probably eliminated getting much risk of any harm. So, and he didn't seem to. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't his very best game, but I think the very fact that he exists, the very fact that he's out there up in the forward line, it's a real worry for the backman with a guy like him. And it was good enough for him to go into ruck as well. So, yeah, I'd say the very, very fact that he causes chaos for backman having the thought of standing him, and then the very fact that he was capable of doing some relief in the ruck, justified his selection, in my opinion.
Just for the listeners, we actually did win this game. So, I'd like to think we get a bit more positive too, Finn. But look, I actually thought Fogg looked pretty sore too. There was one time where he tried to lay a tackle on Hewitt, I think, or Cherry, one of the two, at centre half forward, and he looked pretty sore trying to do that. And he just looked like he was favouring that a bit. So it was basically up to Tex to create a contest most of the time, and he looked pretty tired by halfway through the game. So it was pretty good effort from Tex. He didn't have a great game in general, but he did compete pretty well. It looked like we were. It looks like something that could become an issue very quickly for us, just because we've got two talls who are clearly injured, and another one who's obviously at the twilight of his career. So we needed the other boys to pick up the slack in the forward line, and they did. But that could be an issue pretty quickly because they both look hampered.
Yeah, and look again. I guess Brownie, it's the mentality of: are we playing for the future? Or are we playing for now? I worry that we're gonna cook a bloke like Thilthorpe if we start playing him with like a compound dislocation. Means that it's not just about the ability or not to use the hand, but also the risk of further infection and all that sort of stuff. Often with compound fractures and compound dislocations, it's a week or two off to allow that to heal. And he clearly was hampered because he hardly went for the ball with two hands. And Big Man was rightly pointed out that Fogarty at times looked hampered too, and clearly not 100%. So a game against the 15th side in the competition in a season that we're not going to win the flag, is it worthwhile taking those risks, Brownie, you reckon?
I think they probably went in with the mentality, had we beaten Fremantle, I reckon they would have rested Thilthorpe. I think the fact that we lost probably played into their selection strategy a bit. I didn't mind it as long as the medical staff are 100% that he can't do more damage, but I thought he'd have some kind of like plastic cap over it or something, and he just had it strapped, so there's clearly the risk that you could do it again. So I think it's a risk, but I think they took a calculated risk on the basis that if we drop this game, then it's going to make things very difficult going forward.
Yeah, and look, to my point of view, I think it worked out great in the sense that we only got only 4 goals out of the 3 tall forwards. Yeah, was it 4 or 5 max? But I think it was 4.
No, it was
4.
Yeah, and we kicked 16 for the game, which means that we got 12 from other sources. So, in that sense, I think that it was good to see that they did play not 100% fit, and that they actually maybe didn't perform 100% to what they're capable of. But that still didn't stop us from scoring another 12 goals on top of what they contributed, and pantsing the opposition. So overall, I've got no objection to it at all. And they got through, both of them, the players we're talking about, they got through the game, and they'll be better with next week. So I think all good.
It does show how little faith they have in Burgess, though, who's playing some decent SANFL footy, but I think they're pretty spooked by how he played last year and how he fared when he was in the team. So it's unfortunate. Again, I've raised this before, but Toby Murray getting injured was a real shame because I actually think he would have come in. He was in pretty good form, and they really liked what he was doing, and he would have been a great replacement for Filthy because it obviously can pinch hit in the ruck. It's just a shame that happened because he would have debuted for sure.
Yeah. All right, now to ensure the longevity of Big Man's sanity, we'll leave that all there now, and we'll talk more specifically about the game. I've got the AFL stats up there. The big thing that I saw that was either a result of our changed midfield configuration or our matchup with Carlton, personally I think it's probably the latter, we got back to dominating the outside ball, and ultimately I think that's where we controlled the game. We were able to get the ball outside. We smashed them in uncontested possessions, something 255 to 192 in uncontested possessions. We also beat them at the contest relatively convincingly. 16 to 6 centre clearances was amazing against a midfield that includes a dual Brownlow medalist. And stoppage we broke even. Riley O'Brien did particularly well against TDK. So, our midfield worked. And as a consequence, we were able to get the ball on the outside and control it. And Brownie, I don't know what you reckon, but it looked to me like that's how we got it done this week.
Yeah, the midfield balance was great, and I know Riley dominated the hit-outs. I would say, it wasn't a hell of a lot that went cleanly to our midfielders. I think a lot of them were 50-50 contests that we were able to win and get the ball out to clean air. But I think we just were more dynamic and faster paced in the midfield. And I think the mix that we went with, especially like you said, running Rochelle through there was fantastic. I don't know why they didn't run him through in the second half, but he obviously did the job that they wanted in the first half. And then when Berry came in, he was fantastic, and Peatling showed he was brilliant as well. So I think they all showed enough that hopefully Nix and the coaching staff are looking at that and seeing the positives rather than the fact that Matt Crouch wasn't there. They're seeing the positives that we can do the job without him.
And I reckon 100% right. And I think Peatling is the man that really should be replacing the role that Crouch plays, in the sense that Peatling, he's quite happy to get down and dirty and get that hard ball, but the same guy will be also running around the ground looking for a free ball as well. So, or if he does get it, he'll bring these other players into the game. I think Peatling is the one that I would be trying to develop non-stop as the guy that does all the dirty work in the midfield and to help the others out, because you're right about Crouch. I think Big Man's also right about Crouch. His one wood is getting those hard balls in down low, but there isn't much after that. And whereas Peatling has got the full game, he's got a full bag of irons. He can play more than one way. And I think that I would be playing Peatling with a lot more CBAs than they have.
Big Man.
I think he did it. I think that was would have been up there for Peatling's highest percentage for the year, I reckon.
Oh, no doubt.
It was.
Yeah, so and it made a difference. He's really coming to his own after a couple of early not quiet games, but he was a bit shaky, maybe just a bit nervous, to be honest, in those first couple of games. But since then, he's
trying
been
a bit hard, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I just think he's been rock solid since then, for sure. And he's, I agree with what all of you said. Really, the midfield mix looked a lot sharper, and that's Carlton's game. Their contested clearance work. I think they're the highest stoppage team in the AFL, and and we beat them there, and obviously smashed them on the outside. It's interesting. Like, I reckon in the first 15 minutes, maybe they were pretty dominant in the midfield, but after that, I'd love to know, like, after maybe the first 15 minutes of the game, what the differential was, because I feel like we really outplayed them in the midfield, like at stoppage, pretty much after that point of the game. So, and they've got some pretty big boys in there too. So that was a really good sign for us. And what I loved too was just like we talked about last week, Fiend, just the method outside stoppage and also off half back was so much better. Obviously, we were kick marking a bit, like we did in the first couple of rounds. But we're also choosing the right moments to release by hand, have overlap, and use the corridor. And guys like Max Michaelani particularly was really good in terms of breaking the lines there and taking meterage. And the midfielders themselves, like Rankine, obviously we know he can do that, but Saligo did it. Peatling does it. Even Dawson, I thought he looked a bit fresher on the weekend, and he did it too. So we just looked a lot more mobile there. And I thought our method and transition was so much better than the stodgy play that we saw the other game. So, like, how much was that in terms of Carlton's lack of pressure? That would definitely be part of it. But I thought our own method was really strong and as good as I've seen this year.
Well, it's interesting because I think it is a bit about our matchup with Carlton. They don't have a lot of really good outside ball getters and transition players, in my opinion. So we did really well to match them at the contest and be able to get the ball out on our terms. I felt like also not only was our ball movement more dynamic, as we've all pointed out, but we started using the angles again. We were switching lanes, and when we were switching with a little bit of speed and urgency rather than just getting henned in that bloody, back pocket all the time like we have been the last couple of games. So our ability to get the ball out and spread Carlton, they don't like that. They're not set up for that kind of a game. And I think that's probably why we do well against them traditionally, because it's been a while, as far as I can remember, since they've had any really good outside runners. They are very much a contested ball side, and once we got the ball on our terms, they didn't seem to be able to get it back off us.
No, and it was weird because particularly in that second half, I was watching them and I thought to myself, they're simultaneously flooding the back line. And yet we whenever we got the ball back off there, because they would kick it out of defence and we would get the rebound, get the repeat inside 50, and we'd still manage to find spare players inside 50. So they'll both had heaps of players back in defence and yet still couldn't plug holes. So something went terribly wrong with their defensive setup. And I think it was good to see us lower the eyes too a lot more. There was less long bombs, which we couldn't do just because we didn't. Our key markers back there, so up forward, were obviously injured. So we won't be able to take those sort of marks. Plus, you don't want to let Wiedering and Haynes take intercept marks for days. So for us to actually lower our eyes and hit those short targets was really good. And that's where guys like Neil Bullen and Isaac Cumming and such, Rochelle as well, they lower the eyes. They reward short hit-up leads. And, we kicked a lot of goals from set shots from like 30, 40 out. And that's because a lot of the time we lowered our eyes and didn't just long bomb all the time.
Yeah. Very good call. Very good call there.
Thanks, Macca.
Yeah. That's too positive, Macca. Get in the sin bin. Too positive.
He's good. He's good.
Brownie, I thought that, as we mentioned before, Rochelle, not only when he was in the centre, but also up forward, he looked really up and about, back to himself. And I reckon now that he's got over his ribs and that, because he started the season really well, I reckon we're about to see what we're going to get from Josh Rochelle in the next month.
Yeah, I think he's a different player this year. If he can stay fit, I think he's going to be good for 2 or 3 goals a week. And if they can run him through the midfield a bit, one will get the benefit because he's just a ball magnet. But I think it'll keep him sharper as well. I think it's he was great on the weekend, and he can find space in the forward 50 really easily. I don't know why, but I think Carlton were very guilty of not paying a lot of attention to our forwards. They were just leaving holes and not cutting across to try and intercept leads. They were really, I don't know if they were lazy
very
or
one-on-one, wasn't it?
It was one-on-one, but they were giving space, like Wiedering a couple of times. Like he left a couple of marking contests. He didn't even contest. And the ball was marked by his direct opponent. They just looked like a rabble. But I do think Rochelle is, like, his ball sense around the goal. Like, I don't reckon he's the best set shot for goal, but he kicked a really nice one on the weekend. but his ball sense, like when he's kicking around the body, he's fantastic. Like he doesn't miss many, and he just gets the ball. I think he's got a lot of upside.
I reckon your point about getting him involved more is really a key point. It's a really good point because I reckon he thrives on being involved, and I think at times you can get a bit lost at half forward if the ball's not coming in, or you can end up being a bit piggy in the middle where the ball's just going back and forth over your head sort of thing. And getting him in around the contest, I think, is, like you say, really important. And even if it's only for 2 or 3 CBAs a quarter, or 1 or 2 CBAs a quarter, or just give him a little bit of a spin in general play up around stoppage, I think that's the sort of thing that will get his motor running and get his heart pumping. And I think he's the sort of player that really needs that.
Oh, for sure.
The other person I thought had a really good game was Isaac. He looked like he was back on top of the ground. Again, like they didn't pay him enough attention, in my opinion, Macca. They didn't I think Voss was asked at halftime about Dawson, and Voss's response was, "Oh yeah, we haven't really done very well up to now in that space," and blah blah blah. And the same could have been said about Rankine as well. And I just felt like, I don't know, it's like blokes like Patrick Cripps didn't have a huge impact on the game. I thought Hewitt was all right in patches for them, but they didn't seem to really want to shut anyone down and try and stop us from getting those outlets.
Well, there were times they did try to stop Rankine at times, but the guy's just so clever in terms of his body movements and the way he just twists, turns, bulks, feints. At times I thought he's got to be caught here, and next minute he's just burst through clear. Look, you can't believe that a club can actually get 2 players like Dawson and Rankine in as a trade. It's just 2 of the best players in the competition. Unbelievable. And both of them, they started in this particular game. But coming back to Rankine, Rankine was, I thought, at his very, very best. I mean, he was reading the ball well. And look, he played primarily as a midfielder. And he's one of the reasons that makes our midfield look totally different when he's there, because of his ability to read the ball. He's an outstanding player.
Tell you what, so I was going to say Sam Walsh. God, he was pretty ordinary. I don't know if they've cooked him or if it's his back issues have played up again, or because I know he's had a back and hamstring issues, but he was really ordinary on the weekend. I mean, Cripps is probably their best midfielder. But yeah, I was surprised because Sam Walsh has had some big games against us in the last couple of years, but he was nowhere to be seen on the weekend.
I don't know whether they've got their mix. I don't think they've got their mix right, Carlton. They've got
Chera and Hewitt are the same player, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
I would have thought they also look like each other as well. But it's interesting because Hewitt, up until this year, was more of their. They never really had a straight up tagger, but he was definitely on that side of things in terms of a defensive midfielder. But he's sort of become a bit of a ball magnet for them this year. So they've got basically 3 ball hunters in there, plus Walsh. That's 4.
Yeah.
And they put and I guess they wanted to inject some speed in there, so they put Motlop in there, but that didn't work at all for them. So they've got Walsh is their quickest player, but he sort of looks like he's running in treacle at the moment. So that their mix in the midfield isn't quick. They actually remind me a bit of us a few years ago when we had Tomo and Sloan, Matt Crouch and stuff in there.
Yeah, and Laird and that. Yeah.
Well, Walsh just get a nice corky from Dawson as well. He got an into the thigh.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah. Brownie, I thought the other thing that was I think probably came as a result of our midfield dominance. It allowed our defenders to be more aggressive, and I thought obviously Max and a bit of Brody Smith, Rory Laird, I thought played a really good game. Yeah, but it also allowed blokes like Josh Warl, who I thought was probably our best, and even Mark Keane to be more aggressive in intercepting. And I felt like, yes, a lot of our work came off our half-back line, but I think that was made possible due to the pressure that we were putting on up the ground through midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Michael Annie especially the last 3 or 4 weeks, you can just see his confidence has gone to another level, and he's brought that attacking side into his game. Like, he was pretty much a shutdown defender last year. This year, his intercept marking, I think he took 12 marks on the weekend. Probably only 2 or 3 were contested, but he's just working hard both ways and finding space and getting like little marks in the forward line, and he's carrying the ball and getting meters gained that he wasn't getting last year. Warl was great, like his intercept marking and spoiling in the last line of defence, but he's not taking the easy option for that little 15-metre outlet chip. He's kicking a 35, 40-metre kick and hitting a target out on the wing, and he's just been brilliant. Not just his marking and nullifying, but he's been so creative as well. And even Laird took a few contested marks, which was
one
unusual.
In particular that stood out. I thought it was Laird's best game for a long time, actually. On
the boundary line, and he took 3 or 4, but and he actually used the ball really well. Brodie Smith as well. Like, Brodie didn't get a heap of the ball, but everything he did pretty well. It was probably the most
Brodie
complete.
Making any mistakes.
No, I think it was the most complete defensive effort we've had this year. Our ball use coming out of the back half was as good as it's been.
I've got to say,
throw into that.
Sorry, go on, Mac.
I was just going to say, Thane, and what Brownie said was 100% right. And you've got to throw in Miller as well, who played the best game I've seen Miller play for many, many a long day. He had 27 disposals.
Hardest game, Mac.
Yeah, I know. And he earned some of those balls the hard way, which was really good. And he, as we know, his usage of the ball is very, very good. So, Brownie's quite right. It was a very complete effort down the back. I mean, we rubbish Laird quite often that he looks for cheap kicks, but I thought he played a proper half-back's game, and he played due respect to his opponent, but beat him and got the ball and used it well. So overall, and Michael Annie, I tell you what, he started. I mean, he had 27 disposals. I mean, that's incredible. And so they all added up, and we talk about what happened on the ball, but gee, the guys down back did their job as well.
Just quickly on Max, 27 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 21 uncontested, 8 score involvements, 520 metres game, and as you mentioned, 12 marks. I think 3 of those were contested and 9 uncontested. So certainly it seemed like he'd been, whether it was just matchups, but he was the one that was providing quite a bit of run from halfback. A lot of overlap run through the corridor, as Big Man mentioned earlier. But the funniest thing, in my opinion, was late in the game when Sam Walsh has run up to give him a massive hit and shoulder, and he may as well have run against a brick wall because Max has just dropped him, just stood there and dropped him, and then just laughed at him.
That was great.
That was funny. And when you look at Max, he's a bloody stick, and Sam Walsh has had a few years of conditioning on him in terms of muscle, and didn't stand a chance. And just the look on Michael Annie's face was like priceless, and I reckon Sam Walsh might get a bit of stick for that from his from his peers over the next week or so.
It's a bit like Rob and Sherry a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and the other good one, I don't think we probably spent enough time talking about Josh Warl because I thought he was huge, and he's shown himself this year to be an absolute competitive beast. And that run down where he caught up and overtook Motlop to force it behind,
huge.
Just his general tenacity. He hates losing a contest. He said in his interview with me earlier in the season that he gets white line fever, and he is working himself into being an invaluable part of our mix, and. I thought he was fantastic. In fact, even our keys were great. I mean, Curnow and Harry McKay really only got the ball when they worked up the ground. We're in their forward 50. They didn't have a huge amount of say in proceedings. I thought both Jordan Butts and Keane did a pretty good job. But I thought Warrell was fantastic.
Yeah, just on Warl. If I remember rightly, Pete, and tell me if I'm right, I sort of remember that the year that he was drafted, we actually did a trade to make sure that we could get him. Is that right?
No, I don't think
Like
so.
he was in the second round. After the first round, he was still available, and I thought we did a trade to get him in that particular year, because I know that I expected a lot from him because of the fact of that when we got him that they probably had big raps on him. It's taken quite a while for it to come, and I know that other clubs were a bit peeved that they didn't get him, but it's taken a little bit longer than perhaps some players do. But he's gradually built his game, and I think he's sort of reached a crescendo in this particular game. I mean, yeah, look, he was very close. If he wasn't best on ground, he was very close to some of his stuff was absolutely outstanding. Where he's beating ones and twos and threes. I mean, he just was desperate for every ball, and I think he was absolutely outstanding. Great.
He was expected to go in the first round in that 2019 draft. Apparently Geelong were very keen, but they preferred Sam de Koning, who ended up being a great pick anyway. So he sort of just slid a bit more big, and I think there was also some concerns over whether he had the mental sort of aptitude for it. Whether he was he was a bit of laid back type, and they thought he might not be taken seriously enough. But it's funny, he sort of is almost the prototype go home kid. He's from the Bayside in Melbourne. He's went to Haileybury College, Sandringham Dragons. Wasn't getting a game early on. The COVID was hit and all these things, but he took to the club like a duck to water, and he just shows so much fight out there and energy, and clearly loves being around his teammates and at the club. And he's obviously settled in Adelaide, which is great. And Fee mentioned that moment where he got ahead of Motlop, which was just great effort. But also they didn't set mark on when he was sort of out of position, running towards goal against the Acres, and he was out of turn and take the intercept mark. And there was another one where I think it was either Fogarty or White or one of the two, sort of hemmed him down on the half back line, and he sort of just twisted around and made him look silly. And he's clearly growing in confidence, and he's obviously didn't get heaps of opportunity early on. He was in the SANFL a bit. He was also really unlucky with injuries. He broke his arm last year. He's had multiple hamstring injuries and such. So he's been a slow burn. He's not even up to 40 games yet, which is just crazy. But he's been worth the wait because he's playing great footy.
Yeah, most definitely. And he and his partner are well settled in Adelaide. So you mentioned the go home factor. I think as long as we do right by him, I think he will be a long-term member of the Crows, which is a good thing. Look, I just wanted to quickly talk about Geordie Dawson as well, because he's been quite down, even though Rashido reckons that disposal efficiency doesn't count for anything. But I thought when the game was there to be won, it was Jordan Dawson who really stood up at key moments, both defensively and in attack. Brownie had 22 touches, 7 marks, 8 tackles, 11 contested, 6 clearances, 9 score involvements, and 3 goals won. I'd say up to half-time he was clearly best on ground, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I think his marking, when he's playing good footy, his marking comes to the fore, and he was just timing his jump beautifully and out-marking everyone. And he still had a couple of dodgy kicks, but overall his kicking was a hell of a lot better than it has been. The last 3 or 4 weeks he's been really off, and he's pretty much back to Geordie as we knew him last year. I don't know what's been...
That took on the lead. That Markey took on the lead to Dan Curtin on the boundary
before half time.
Yeah. What a ripper that was! What a ripper!
Yeah,
and a great pass.
The finish wasn't
Curtin
bad either.
Too. Yeah, no, the finish was great.
The finish was amazing.
So it was good to see him back. I felt it. Branny, you and I were talking before the cast. It looked like we were doing a bit of a Darren Jarman with him and playing him at centre bounces and then letting him go to different spots on the ground.
Yeah, and I think he's, like as you said last week, he's not a dyed-in-the-wool midfielder. I think if we're letting him run off the half-back flank and run off the half-forward flank, it's so hard for them to match up on him. If he's and he's a great aerobic beast as well. So I think that's what we've got to do with him. I'd be happy if he was playing off the half-back flank and playing that attacking half-forward role, drifting into the forward line occasionally. I think that'd be great. But I mean, it worked on the weekend. I don't know that you want him in the midfield against the best teams. I suppose that's a wait and see. But I suppose while we've got Hinge and Brodie Smith and we've got too many half-back flankers, he's not going to get a role there for him. So they'll probably keep playing him in the midfield, but I think you just want him there for bursts. You don't want him there. I'll be pushing Pete Ling and I'd probably say Berry in there a bit more if they could.
Well, it was interesting that, Big Man, I don't know whether this is how it looked at the ground, but it looked like they were using him as a Cripps nullifier at centre bouncers and then basically saying, right, now make Cripps accountable. That's what it looked like to me. Yeah,
so when Cripps wasn't on the field, Dawson went forward, and then as soon as Cripps would come back go into the centre square, he would go back into the centre square and join him. So, it's really well noticed their thing. But, he was obviously he was outstanding. As we talked about last week, how he's not a particularly great clearance player. He's not really a first use player. He tends to be the guy that gets the ball from the as a receive, which is fine. But the important thing is that his kicking is at the level that we know it can be, and I just thought he showed a lot more composure. He was out. He used it by hand a bit more when he had to, and you're right. He
it was noticeable. I
But
reckon his first 4 disposals were handballed. It was almost like they'd done the reverse Sid Draper and gone, stop kicking the bloody thing, Dawson, handball it.
Because
it's very noticeable.
Sometimes handballing is the better option. You don't always have to. If you're hemmed in and you're flat-footed.
I'd just give you shit, mate. I'm giving you shit. It was noticeable. It was noticeable that I noticed his first 4 touches were handballs. It was like, all right.
Yeah,
that's a conscious effort, in my opinion.
It was the quintessential Dawson game, and the fact that he got a lot of the ball. His kicking was for the most part back to its best, and he was able to go forward and take big marks, like serious marks that most players who are midfielders in the AFL can't take, and that's what separates him from some of the others.
Oh, I reckon he's got one of the best sets of hands in the whole competition. You can see the ball coming and you see him set himself, and he's going to mark it. Whereas with most players, you hope they're going to mark it.
Do you know who he reminds me of? Do you know, Mac, who he reminds me of? And Brownie, you'll love this. Bloody Stephen Copping, because he plays so bloody tall and his hands are so bloody sticky. Like, he's really gives me that old school Stephen Copping, because Stephen Copping used to play 5-10 centimetres taller than what he actually was, because he just had such a great
his arms are about 9 metres long. He had the longest arms I've ever bloody seen.
He did.
I reckon he could have scratched his feet without just still stand straight up. His arms are that long.
Anyway, it was good to see Dawes back in some form, I'm going to hold my fire about, let's see it against good opposition. I think that's a given. I think we all sit back and go, that's great. Carlton, maybe not the best benchmark, but you can only beat the team that's put in front of you. You can only beat the opponents that put in front of you. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, and again, Big Man, I'd ask you whether it was noticeable on the ground. I noticed a very, very strong desire to get around blokes. Whenever someone did a tackle, a spoil, a smother, a big effort, it was very evident to me. And Alex Neil-Bullen was driving this. I saw him point a few times, and Isaac Cumming was another. Yep. They were very, very much around getting around each other. And my first question to you, Big Man, at the ground was that evident to you on the ground? And secondly, as a general comment, that's what we miss in away games, in my opinion. That ability to generate our own hype. It's easy to do it at home, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it was there. That's something I noticed as well. It just seemed like the boys were really lasered in for that game, and just the energy of the group seemed a lot better. And that's something that we have to address when we do travel interstate, because do that every second week almost. And it's, for whatever reason, I mean, look, to be fair, it is easier to do it when you're playing well and you're in front early in the game. When you concede, the first few goals of the game, like we did against Freo, it's pretty hard to generate that same enthusiasm, because you feel like you're already up against it, particularly, and then you got the opposition crowd and everything else works against you. So that's what you have to do when you stay, and that's why it's so important to start well when you play away, because if you don't, it's sort of that festers throughout the whole team, and suddenly you look like you're really just down in the dumps, and it's really hard to get that momentum back. So I'm sure that was put to them before the game, that they had to it's a basic thing, obviously, but it makes a difference. And when you reward your teammates and you encourage your teammates for doing the basics, like Rory Laird, that tackle he laid on
crunching tackle.
It was a ripping tackle, and Lairdy, I don't think Lairdy's laid a tackle like that for years. So that he's an experienced player who wasn't that long ago, he was refusing to chase.
Yeah.
We saw that last year, and for him to do that was like, wow, it's good. Like, obviously we expect that, but it's still great to see. And I think that energy that the guys you mentioned, coming, Newborn and such, that feeds into everyone else in the team. That's how you get those results.
Yeah, I think, Brownie, too, that it's something that you can sleep on, and I reckon they would have looked at the Fremantle game last week, where they didn't come out firing any guns at all and just got swamped and the game was over, taken away from us in the first quarter. I reckon they would have. It just struck me as a concerted effort to, like, little things, like little deflections and spoils and whatnot. They were really making a conscious effort to get around them, and I reckon they would have. It seemed to me that would have been a talking point during the week.
Yeah, and I think against Freo, after halfway through the first quarter, the body language was a little bit obvious. We just looked a bit deflated.
Yeah, just flat.
And then the only time we really showed a little bit was that last 15 minutes when Freo put the cue on the rack. So I'm sure that was a definite strategy to try and get the boys more involved. But it was on the weekend. It was it might have been just a simple a tackle or whatever it was, but it wasn't just one guy coming up for a high five. It was like 6 or 7 running past.
Exactly. Yeah,
and it looked like a real concerted effort to do it. And let's hope they can keep doing it, because as Big Man says, doing it away from home when you've got that away crowd against Collingwood's going to be great in 2 weeks' time. It's going to be the test, because you're going to have probably 80,000 people there, and if they kick the first 2 goals, that's going to be when we've got to really show something. So we'll see if we do.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned Collingwood, because I reckon if you look at Collingwood's away record, not that they play out of Victoria more than 5 times a century, but they have got a very good record in Adelaide and in Perth, and I think they're one of those teams that are very good at being a closed unit when they're playing away, and really pumping each other up, getting around each other and generating their own, almost locking out the crowd and all the rest of it, and just being their own motivators.
Yep, absolutely.
Very good.
Dean, I don't know if you're going to take any more individuals. I was just going to have a quick shout out to, I mentioned before, but Isaac Cumming. Just his ball use. He's delivering inside 50. That's why it's great to have him on the wing, even though I think he's a natural intercept defender. I think his ability to lower the eyes and hit up targets, it makes such a difference to our ball movement. So, his stats don't scream out or anything like that, and he's probably not going to get talked out a whole lot this year, to be honest. But I think he's just quietly having a really important impact for us. He just gives us that class we haven't really had in the past. And Zach Taylor too. He obviously didn't play midfield again on the weekend, but he took his chances when he got them. He's so clean and clever in traffic, and he waits and waits till he sees the best option. He doesn't rush his disposal, and he also provides quite a bit in terms of his defensive stuff with his tackling and everything. So, he's the worst runner in the club, but you don't really notice it in the game because he's just a footballer. And I'm glad we're still giving him opportunity, because I reckon a month ago he probably thought he wasn't going to get a game, to be honest, at the rate that things were going. But obviously with Rochelle out, that opened the door for him. And he's been solid without being outstanding, but that was his best game since he's come back into the team, and hopefully he goes on with it from here.
Well, as our footy director said, he
mate.
doesn't do much, but what he does well. Way to pump a kid up, right? Jesus, Roy. But I agree. Look, he's got real footy IQ, and he's got a great little step inside. He's great inside traffic, actually, in congestion. He's really, he doesn't panic. He seems to have a little moment and uses the ball constructively. So I hope they persevere with him. And in terms of coming, big man, he's really just grown. Like, him and James, and even Alex Neil-Bullen for that matter, they come into the side. We've got to remember Peatling's only played 50 games. I don't think Cummings has played 100 games, has he? They're
89,
both,
I think.
Yeah, so they're both, reasonably fresh AFL talent as it is. And it was always going to take them a little while just to work into the system and, get comfortable and all the rest of it. But they're all having a real impact now. James with his attack on the ball, Isaac with his fantastic disposal. He's very, very clean and composed, and Neil-Bullen with his leadership on the ground and, key possessions at key moments, Neil-Bullen. So fantastic pickups, all of them. Macca, what do you reckon?
Yeah, look, you couldn't. There's nothing that could argue anything you just said there, because what I love about Neil-Bullen is he's not just to think about the possession he's having. He's to think about the whole forward line structure, the whole structure around him. You can see him directing people to go here, to go there, and whatever he tells when he tells them to go there, that's where the ball goes. I mean, he really reads the play beautifully. I think a great acquisition, and he was always going to go into the leadership team because he was really, really smart at it when he was at Melbourne as well. And in terms of the other two players, Peatling, well, he's like I know he's.
You got to stop talking about Peatling, because all the blood rushes to your little head, and you can't afford that at your age. Just settle down.
I love him, mate. He is going to be really a great player for us, because I mean he does the whole like he's it seems like he's a flexi rod at times. I can't believe how he gets out of situations. But he's tough. He never pikes, but and he just. To me, he's just a great pickup in terms of our midfield. He just adds something we didn't have before. And coming, well, he's like somebody said, like laser leg, and I think it was in the chat, and I thought beautifully said, because we don't have another player who could actually every time just put it on the chest like he does. They were great acquisitions to the club. They weren't household names in terms of being stars, but when you keep adding players like that with good quality to your team, you are actually raising the overall standard of the team. And I just hope we keep doing that and just keep attracting and there's one I'd really love to get in the boat from St Kilda. I mean, you know who I'm talking about. But another Peatling, another Neil-Bullen. Every year, just add one of them in there because they're good.
And we didn't lose a first round pick either, Macca, to get them. One was a free agent, the other one was a second rounder, and the other one was a second rounder with some change coming back. So that's the way to do it. I don't mind trading first round picks if it's for elite young talent. So like we did with Rankine. Yeah. I would have done it for Horn Francis if he wanted to come here as well. Guys like that. But don't trade. I
would have given you away for Horn Francis.
Don't trade it for like older players. Like don't do it with
Gibbs. I agree.
And don't trade it for players who you don't fully trust, like a Lukosius, like Port did. So, I think that's smart trading. I don't think you just get players in for the sake of it, because suddenly, it's good for your depth, but you sort of clog your list up a bit. But I think all three players had something to offer in different ways to us. And I think that was probably the best off-season trading we've done in years or decades almost.
Half forward, half forward. a half forward, a wingman, and an on-baller. I mean, you can't do better.
So, look, we all agree it was a very promising result against probably an opponent that would be disappointed with their effort. But as we mentioned, you can only beat the team that comes out in front of you. So let's be positive about the win and look forward to the showdown next week, which we'll talk about in a little while. But just to break things up, why don't we just look at the rest of the round real quick, Macca? Considering you're here, I'd like to make use of your insightful observations. So away we go with Macca's weekend results.
Let's do it.
All right, so we had on Friday night, we had the Bombers getting up in the end by 3 points over North, 9-11-65 to 9-8-62. North probably a little bit unlucky, I think.
They were. Essendon really run it in the first quarter when they got a 20-point lead, because the rest of the game, North Melbourne came out really hard in the third quarter. They got within a goal at three-quarter time, and the last quarter was just a slugfest going backwards and forwards. And they had a shot in the dying moments, but they missed, and which happened in another game later. So North Melbourne did have an opportunity to win the game, but a much improved performance by them. Merritt outstanding, Sherry outstanding.
St Kilda 14-10-94 destroyed the Dockers 5-3-33. It's hard to believe.
That's typical, eh?
Like, it's just that's a weird result.
Well, it is a weird result, isn't it? Because I mean, we got absolutely thrashed by them, and you know, and with Brayshaw and Sarong, but they had the heaviest tags you've ever seen in your life. They were just about wearing the same shorts as them. They were that close to them. They just never gave them really a chance to get into it, and without that drive from Brayshaw and Sarong, they had nothing, and. And it made St Kilda look very, very good. You know, Freo hung in a little bit, but then after half time was just a slaughter. Very, I'd say, embarrassing performance by Freo, and along with it, well, he must wonder about his job a little bit. Well,
it's a topsy-turvy season, because the next one was also surprising in probably the heaviness of the defeat. The Bulldogs 2011-131, Port only kicking 5-11-41. They'd be disappointed with that too.
Just want to say one thing. I don't think it's right that Adelaide and Port Adelaide always have to go to that dunghill. It's not right. It just isn't right. It's you're playing on a ground where there's also it's under construction at the moment as well. And on top of that, you always get about a 5 to 10 goal bloody breeze there. I just don't think it's right. Send the bloody would Collingwood ever be sent there? Not in your mad fit. Anyhow, I've had that rant. But, you know, Port were pathetic, absolutely pathetic. Dogs embarrassed them, actually. And, you know, I don't know whether the Bulldogs are that good or Port were that poor, but that Port midfield went well, but that's about the only thing that did go well. They were overall terrible.
And then a bit of a classic on Saturday night, the Collingwood Magpies just failing to get Jack Crisp's fairy tale done. Jack himself had the opportunity to get that fairy tale done and just couldn't pull it off. But they really shouldn't have let Geelong back into the game. Geelong 13-12-90, Collingwood 12-15-87, Mac.
It was a rip of a game, you know, and as you said, it was a classic game, and it was anybody's game at three-quarter time. And at that stage, the Pies were just travelling that slightly bit better, but, you know, Geelong, like they did to us, they took control in the last quarter. They kicked 4 goals. They were dominating the game, and they just looked like it was all over. But then the Pies lifted in the last 3 minutes 30, and they scored 2 goals. They had an opportunity to kick a winner, Crisp, after the siren, but not to be. And it was sad. It would have been nice to have seen that happen, because I don't like Geelong. They're the team I don't like the most. But anyhow. Bad luck for Collingwood, and unfortunately Geelong win.
Just quickly on that one, Fiend. If you want to see a class difference in personalities, so Dangerfield, who played amazing, by the way, has never really had a bad word to say about us. Yeah. Bailey Smith, after the game, was asked about playing in front of that crowd. It was a great crowd he played in front of. And he said, you don't get this in Ballarat. So he's he's had a dig at his old club, the Bulldogs, having to play in those places. And to me, that's just, I mean, look, as much as, some will say, it's a funny little line, it's nothing serious. I still think it's disrespectful when you're considering, he put that club through a bit of shit with the drug issue, and they sent him on holiday. He got to do a big holiday last year. He had the ACL recovery. They drafted him, and that's what he has to say about them. So, I don't know. It just, to me, that's completely disrespectful, and just shows that it's all a bit about Bailey, isn't it? He doesn't seem to respect those around him and those that have helped him.
I think the biggest observation anyone could make about Bailey Smith is that he's just a shit bloke. Yep. Just a shit bloke.
Fair comment.
And I'm using the word bloke instead of a different word. But he's not a quality human being.
Yeah, and just quietly, he's joined Geelong. Geelong playing bloody Geelong nearly every second week. It's not exactly a marquee stadium either. There's not going to be massive crowds there. So he's a hypocrite, and as you said, he's just a bit of a flog, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a flog. Flog is a good term. We'll stick with flog. Speaking of floggings, the West Coast Eagles got flogged by Melbourne. What a segue, God. 16-12-108 to 11-10-76. Eagles sort of hung around a little bit for a while there, Mac, but never really pushed Melbourne too much.
No, Gorn was outstanding, and Petrarca, he decided he'd have a game on as well, and it was, West Coast were in the game for half a game, but then after that, these just gradually pulled away. I think one of the strange things about that game was the non-selection of Oliver by mutual agreement for the benefit of his health. I just thought that's a strange situation.
Well, that's what happens when you is that what happens when you self-report, Macca? I'm not sure.
I think that's what I think. Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not implying anything, and allegedly, but it just seems to me, is that what happens when you stick your hand up?
Didn't pass the sniff test.
Let's just say it could well be. We don't know, but it could well be.
Look, let's not joke around. Clayton Oliver's got some problems, but I just found it a bit.
It did stick out, didn't it? Yeah.
It was bizarre, and that's what it was.
Yeah, didn't pass
bizarre
the sniff test.
Word. That's the word.
Didn't really pass the sniff test, did it, Mac?
No, didn't.
So to speak. And then today we had the Swans. Giants are in a bit of a hole. They're better than this. I don't know what's going on with the Giants at the moment, but Sydney got it done, 12-15-117 to 10-13-73.
Yeah, the Swans jumped the Giants. They got the first 5 goals of the game, and the GWS, fought back throughout the whole game, and they always looked like they were a chance to get there, but every time they got within about 10 points or 12 points, then Sydney would go and get the next goal, and that sort of kept going right to the end of the game, and they ended up winning by 14 points. And they would look. It all was resolved really in the first few minutes of the game when they got those early goals, and from then on it was a break even. But that's too bad for GWS.
Guyman just said in the chat, and I'm just going to confirm this because I can't believe it. Freeze Sydney 9, GWS 27. Is that right?
Troy Parnell there, was he?
Bloody hell!
I didn't actually look at the free kicks.
I'm just gonna have a look.
I didn't pick that up in the game, but
Yep. No, Freeze 9 to 27. That you can't have. That's ridiculous. You can't statistically in a close game like that, or a reasonably close game like that, you can't have such a disparity. That's ridiculous.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, that's three ratio of 3 to 1. That just doesn't make sense.
Let's not get too started on the umpires though. Like, I will say this, right? Rory Laird got pinged delivered on the weekend just because of the crap kick.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, Sydney were able to overcome it, so good on them. And then the Hawks made short work of Richmond, 16-13-109 to 6-8-44.
Yeah, look, they're just far too good. One of the things that came out of that was They traded in Josh Battle, and he had 33 disposals, so they'd be delighted with their trade in as well. He could play. But Hawks overall just too strong.
And the last match, which wasn't finished when I was doing my little slide.
No, I don't know what happened in that one.
Well, it was the Lions 9-12, 66 to the Suns 7-7-49.
Okay, and
I thought the Suns
one
might
last
get
thing
up
I
on
want.
that one.
No, I just went. Brisbane are very, very good. They're a good side. Not quite in this segment, but this is a question for Big Man. Yep. When Smith kicked that goal, and they play the music of "Am I ever going to see your face again?" Did you sing? Did you sing along with the whole crowd? Sing the whole lot?
Some of us did, but because we haven't had Brodie Smith, playing, let alone kick goals. They cut it, and I think a lot of the crowd just didn't expect that to happen, and it all caught everyone off guard. But I'll tell you, there was a few in the crowd, including maybe myself and a few others who might have, sung along a little bit. But no, it was good. It was a good moment.
With the extra words at the end. My son was DJ. He said,
it's a good choice.
Rabbit in the chat saying that they cut the audio hard for the crowd callback.
Yeah.
That would have Smithy's audio, I'm guessing.
That's very good.
Yeah. I got to say, I mean, good sense of humour on Brodie's behalf. I wonder whether because they pick him at the beginning of the season. I wonder at the time whether he thought he'd ever that'd get played. So it was probably a bit tongue in cheek at the time, and then all of a sudden, there it is.
Yeah, it was so funny.
All right, so that leaves us with a table of the Lions now clear in front on 28 points. Collingwood, Hawthorn on 24 points. Gold Coast with a game in hand on 20, along with us and the Western Bulldogs, and also the Cats. So we're sitting fifth at the moment. Giants still in the 8 on 16 points. And then out of the 8 on 16 points, Freo, St Kilda, Essendon and Port. Carlton on 12, along with Sydney and Melbourne. Richmond on 8, North on 4, and West Coast yet to do anything exciting. So, look, here we are, round 8. We're in the top half a dozen. We're fifth. I think if we'd been offered that at the beginning of the season, we would have taken that. So a lot of water to go under the bridge. But I guess, despite a couple of disappointing losses, which like last week I think really put a dampener on us, didn't it? Big Man, you and I were... I know
flat.
I was...
Flat as a bush biscuit, mate.
Yeah, it was just... It came... That sort of... I thought last week's effort was behind us. I didn't expect us to get another performance like that. So that really flattened us out. But it was good to bounce back this week, and irrespective of the opposition, we won pretty convincingly.
Yeah, I think one thing at least about our boys is that, they obviously sometimes they don't turn up, but at least they don't tend to give up. They'll generally fight it out, and it doesn't mean much in the end. A loss is a loss, and you can paper up cracks and whatever. But compare us to Port. Port are sort of the opposite. They either turn up or they'll give up. So at least I do respect our boys for generally we don't get blown away. We generally fight it out. So that's good to see at least. But that was. It was only a 19-point loss or 18-point loss, but it felt like a lot more than that last week. So I think the club would be feeling a lot better, and the boys would be feeling a lot better about themselves this week.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Page Emotion in the chat points out that I was just about ready to put the podcast on the market after last week, and then I literally was at the point of getting an appraisal, but we avoided that, thankfully. Sorry, mate, go on.
Yeah. All I was going to say is, I didn't get on because I was feeling ill, but it just seemed like more than an 18-point loss. I know it was only 18 points. It was just because it was we were so poor. It just seemed like we got thrashed. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Particularly because it was all coming out the middle all the time too. Brayshaw and Sarong just slaughtering us, and us doing nothing about it. It was so frustrating, and I understand. In fact, I'm delighted in a way that I wasn't here for that particular one, because all it could be is a bloody downer on you.
That's pretty much what it was.
Yeah. It was like a bloody therapy session last week, I tell you.
Gee, Nixie copped it. Big time.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
Yeah, and look, he's not out of the woods yet either. Matthew, if you're listening, don't rest on your laurels. All right, look, let's quickly do a little bit of housekeeping here. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, you can join us on Discord if you like. The links there in the socials. Get around the community. If you are on YouTube and you haven't yet done so and you wish to do so, please like and subscribe. It always helps our algorithm performance, which is so important on socials. And just looking real quick at the tipping, what happened here? We had Misco only got the 4, so 52. Matty hanging around with Jordan, Michael, and Callum on 51, and then down we go. J-Mac on 50, hanging in there. But it was a funny old tipping week. What did I get? I got 2. And that's why you guys listen to me, because I'm so knowledgeable.
Yeah.
No, to be fair, I didn't put my tips in again this week. I had other things on my mind, so never mind. But it wouldn't have made any difference, I don't reckon.
Probably got the same result.
Yeah, probably, mate. Absolutely. All right, let's round this off with a quick little chat about the upcoming showdown. Brownie, of course, it doesn't matter where the two teams sit on the ladder. It's always a bit of a willing match. I don't know. How do you see it? Is it just a battle of the midfields, do you think?
I think we just need to nullify their midfield. They've definitely got the edge in terms of talent. I just think we need to nullify them. We've clearly got the advantage down back. I think, apart from Georgiadis, they don't have much. If we can shut him down, I think, and we can rebound out of defence with our quality forwards, I think we win the game. But we just need to nullify their midfield. If they can get it out easy and have clean air and hit up targets in the forward 50, that's about their only chance. But I think if we can just I think even this week, like, Rankine's defensive pressure was way better. I think if we can bring that same mentality that Peatling was great, bring that same mentality against Port, and I think we're right in the game.
Big man, what do you reckon?
Well, last year was probably the most spiteful game I've seen for a while between the two teams. Particularly brought on by what Port did and everything that followed from the Houston bump on Rankine. The crowd was just banging for blood that game. There's something in the air that night. Whether that's the case this week, I'm not sure. I mean, Port were in better shape that time last year. They were heading towards the final series, and at the moment they're just going at the moment. Look, I agree. Definitely, they've got the edge in the midfield. I mean, they do have some. I mean, Willie Rioli unfortunately is playing. He got off from the MRP, so that's a bit disappointing because he's actually one of those players that can pose a bit of trouble for us. So maybe Max will probably have to play on him. But they're a good team when they're on, but they're very flaky as well. And hopefully our boys. I mean, I'm sure they'll get themselves up mentally for it, but Port are going to throw a lot at us because that's what they do. It's amazing. You play at the same ground, it's the same teams, but the difference between a home and an away showdown is it's really quite significant. And it's not easy. They're much harder to win those away showdowns. So we have to really bring it, and I hope we do, because Collingwood the week after is going to be a really tough game. We don't beat them at home or away. We always play well against Collingwood, but we never win. So I would hate to see us lose the next two. So I really hope the boys can get up on Saturday night.
Brownie, what do you reckon? I already asked you, didn't I?
Macca? Yeah, go for Macca.
Yep. Look, I'm very disappointed that Rioli's playing because I thought what he did was absolutely identical to what Hinge did, and yet they give it a totally different grading in terms of intensity. I just can't believe it. But I thought he would definitely be not playing. Anyway, he is. And look, I wouldn't be taking Port Adelaide lightly for one moment because I think they really are a Jekyll and Hyde team, and I don't think that they are as good a team if we went through it player by player and match them up. They have an outstanding midfield, absolutely outstanding midfield. I think the best midfield in the competition. And after that, they have a full forward. Yeah, he goes good, but then there's a couple of players like Bergman and Burgoyne who go all right. But they have a lot of players who wouldn't make our side. So having said all that, when they're on, they're still a very, very dangerous team, and it's going to be their crowd, their intent, and which will definitely create intensity in them. So we are going to have to be at our very, very best to win this game. And if we do win it, it won't be by a lot. It'll be only by a small margin, in my opinion. So I think this is one of the hardest games we're going to play this year, and I reckon we'll just scrape in by maybe 5 to 7 points.
Yeah, no, look, they'll bounce back. I think Port are a team that can be easily shut down, but they're also a team that can get on a bit of a roll emotionally, particularly in front of their home ferals.
Yeah.
And, you want to be in the game early, I reckon. That said, we were talking about the boys self-motivating, this week, and I think this Port game is a real opportunity for them to bring that same energy amongst the group, and basically cut the Port crowd out of the equation. We know that there'll still be 20,000 Crow supporters there because Port can't get more than 30 to a game, so they will have some decent support, but I think it's a good opportunity for them to really hone in on getting around each other and celebrating efforts, etc. Look, I think the two keys are whether we can break even with them and stop them getting too much outside run from their clearance work. Butters and Horn Francis, etc. But, Drew, I think, is a little bit unsung. And even Pepper Potts can hurt us sometimes. and idiots like Darcy Byrne-Jones, for some reason, tend to bloody come up and bite us on the arse, and Rioli and those blokes. So I think we have to be diligent, but I think on paper we're a better side than they are this year. So what do you reckon, big man? They've really only got the two tools, Georgiadis and then the young lad.
Lord,
do we keep Butts in, or do we roll with Keane and maybe Warl and go a little bit smaller just to counter their smalls?
No, I'm definitely keeping Butsy in. I thought he was really solid
Wouldn't
on the
be
weekend.
on form. Wouldn't be on form. I
know, and also I know it's about structure as well, but it looked good up there to have that extra bit of height and the defense. I thought made a difference as well. Lord's a tall boy, and Georgiadis, he won't be playing on him anyway. I'd imagine that's for probably for Warl.
Yeah.
It's Keane who probably doesn't have the. If Keane could play on Lord, but who else? They must have someone else up there to chuck up there, wouldn't they? I'd have to look at their team.
I know, Mackie, you watch Port every week. Who's the other one?
No, they don't. Sam Powell Pepper's in the other pocket, and they rotate smalls. The little guy they got from Collingwood, Richard. So they're basically fairly small up forward. They've only really got the two tools. So, but Keane is fairly mobile. So I think you're right in terms of the matchups that you said. I think that's they probably.
There's probably not a exact matchup for Keane, but that might actually work for Keane's favour because he might be able to take some more intercept marks. So,
I was thinking that. I was wondering whether Keane becomes our interceptor. More so than Warl.
His hands were back on the weekend, which was great to see. He took some really nice clean grabs. So hopefully him and Butts got some more confidence now in themselves, and they can get the job done back there. And you mentioned before, Fiend, too, just about the emotional side of things. That's Port to a T, isn't it? They if they don't get themselves up emotionally for games, they tend to not perform. That Hawthorn game, they were so up for that game because of everything that preceded it. And then they nearly lost at the same grounds in North Melbourne, because they didn't have the same external sort of emotion and passion behind it, and so they can be they're a very dangerous team when they're all rah, but if we can get them early, take the sting out of the game. I think that would do a lot, because if we let them get a run on and they get all argy-bargy and stuff, I think that's it could spell a bit of danger for us. So that first quarter, I mean, it's easy to say, isn't it? The first quarter is important, but I think it's really important. So if we can take that fire out of the game early, I think that would make such a difference, because their psyche can drop away really, really quickly.
Mac, you reckon it's going to be a close one? Brownie, what do you reckon? Final margin, winner, final margin?
I'd hope sort of 20. Hopefully it's reasonably comfortable.
Port by 20, you saying?
Rose by 20. What are you talking
about? Big man?
I tipped this last week, didn't I? They got up. I'm actually going to say it's going to be a Port win, unfortunately. I think away showdowns are so hard to win. And unless there was a big difference in quality between the two teams, it's a bit easier, but we're pretty evenly matched with Port. We're very different teams, but I think our talent level's reasonably similar. I think if it was played at like it was in the preseason at Mount Barker or whatever, I think most times we'd get up 7 times out of 10, because I think we're a more even spread in terms of across the field. They just have a few guns and not much else. But yeah, just given what I saw last year, that away showdown was something else, and I'm worried we might get a repeat. I don't think we'll get smashed like we did in that game, but I think it would be really tough for the boys to get up. If they do, I'll be absolutely thrilled. But I'm going to lean towards the close loss, maybe 12 points. There you go.
Wow. Look, on paper, it shouldn't be close, in my opinion. I think we've got them covered personnel-wise. It will depend on which Crows team turns up. I'm probably with you, Mac. I think I'm going to go a close win, probably under 2 goals. I think with not huge confidence, only because big man, you're right. They can get on an emotional ride and ride the wave, sort of thing. But also, I don't think we can trust the Crows just yet to bring it consistently every week. So I want to play. It's an exceptionally important game in terms of our season. If we're looking at finals, etc., it's a really important game. We've got a bit of a tricky run coming up with Collingwood away and Sydney away, and a tough one at
Hawthorn
home.
away.
I forget who. Hawthorn away, and we've got a tough one at home, I think.
Brisbane at home, I think.
Yeah, it might be Brisbane. So it's a tricky
we've got
run.
Melbourne and West Coast in between as well. But apart from that, they're 2 easy games before the bye.
So this is one we really need in terms of the win-loss column. So you would expect, you would think that the boys would be up for it. So another big test. So we'll see how we go.
If this was a home showdown, I'd be very confident. It's just the fact that it's not, that I'm skeptical. That's all.
Yep, that's fair enough.
It's a fair comment,
gentlemen. I have enjoyed this evening with all of you back, despite the Macca.
I knew you were going to raise the feed.
I reckon
he
people
never
get
lets
on.
me on.
Do you know what? I reckon people get on into the live studio channel early just to hear me losing my fucking mind, trying to get you blokes organised before the cast.
I think it's one of their highlights, mate.
Yeah, that and After Dark, I think, are the two things that really they enjoy the most. Oh, we never disappoint, do we? Anyway, all right. Well, look, thanks everyone for joining us. It's been a massive crowd tonight of viewers, both in Discord and on YouTube. So we'd really appreciate your support on both those platforms. I apologise that I haven't been producing Engine Room and previews. I've been crook the last couple of weeks, and then I've got a couple of domestic matters to sort out. So I certainly won't be watching the Showdown live next weekend, and neither will you, Brownie. But we'll have to have a viewing on the Sunday. I'm sure Cam will probably have it. I'm sure Cam will probably have it up on a screen somewhere, knowing him. But anyway, all right. So thanks everyone for being with us tonight. Enjoy your weeks, and we will see you again next week for another weekend wrap. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Good night, all.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Cheers.